Electricast.
Tem um momento na carreira que precisamos dar um passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with a pretty special guest for me, Marla Osner. Marla is a mom, wife, and nurse practitioner by education. However, through her own life experience and hardship, she has become a women's financial coach. Marla's heart lies in teaching not only women, but also teens about personal finance. Education is the key to stop the cycle of generational poverty, debt, and poor financial decisions. She offers women not only financial education, but also assistance in building their budgets, debt repayment, savings, and wealth building. For teens and young adults, Marla offers education on real-life financial management so that our children can avoid the pitfalls of poor money management. I'm excited to talk with Marla today because I have been so excited for this topic because I wish that I had a Marla in my life when I was in school, and having someone talk to me about finances. So welcome to the show. I am so thrilled that you have made time for me today.
Thank you so much. I am incredibly excited to be here. I love talking about finances and helping women and helping teens. So this is right up my alley and I'm ecstatic.
I am really, really excited for it too. But before we dive in to what you're doing currently, I always begin my podcast by learning just a little bit more about my guests' early experiences. So could you share with us just a little peek inside to the journey of Marla the woman, and then we'll explore what you're currently doing today?
Yeah, sure. So I was raised in Pennsylvania, typical family, 2 parents at home, brother, sister. I've really kind of been one of those people who's an ever learner. I did some photo developing as a teen, and then I got into veterinary nursing, and then that led to human nursing and kind of that whole gamut of experience. I was a typical kid. I did sports. I did, all the things, hung out with friends, got married young, got divorced young. Which kind of led to some of this journey. My dad was a CPA. He did benefits and estate planning and all of those things. So money was in my realm as a child. But as a typical teenager, I didn't listen to anything anybody had to say. And, it kind of caught me with my pants down later in life. And that's sort of how Wealthy Women came about, was my life experience and failures, if you will. And, I think we use failures in a judgmental way, but yeah, I failed more than once in my life. And it's what led me to where I am today.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. A lot of people don't realize, or maybe they're not necessarily being taught this, but when we start to really share about our life journey, it is not that there's nothing about us that's not fascinating. In other words, there's always going to be a story that we have that's going to resonate with another person. I truly believe that. I truly believe that every human is born to add value to this world. So that's why I truly believe that we all have a story that's going to resonate with another person. So as I said, what you do, you have your background is so different than what you ended up doing. But I love the fact that you saw a need based on your experience, and you saw that need and you said, I'm going to use my story to help women and teens, have that financial stability, safety, knowledge, wisdom, and how to like move forward with money. Because money can be such a really, really sensitive topic. I know for me growing up, I always believed that money meant struggle because I watched my mom struggle with money. I felt that it wasn't there to support me. I felt it was there to punish because it didn't really, I just saw my mom struggle so much. And so I had to really like unpack those money beliefs. And if I'd had someone, I feel like that would have been able to explain to me different things about money because I didn't really have a financial education. I could have made different choices. I'm not saying that my life, I would change anything about it, but it would have been nice to have that. So I really appreciate you being here today. So I want to ask you, first question, was there a particular moment or experience that you feel motivated your shift from being a nurse practitioner into becoming the women's financial coach?
Yes. So this one will probably get me choked up. It does every time. But, I was sitting in the car at Chick-fil-A with my son, James, who at the time was 3. So it was about 2.5 years after separating from my then husband. And we're sitting in Chick-fil-A parking lot. It is gorgeous. The sun is beating down through the sunroof. The windows are open. You're smelling that beautiful, French fry, peanut oil. And then there's the dumpster that is also wafting dumpster smell through the window. And James is in the back and he's, playing with my hair as I'm on the phone with the mortgage company for the umpteenth time. And I think I've blocked it out. I don't remember the guy's name, but we were on a first name basis for a while there because I was constantly late or giving partial payments to a house I wasn't living in after my divorce. And I was trying to keep up with both rent where I was living and the payments on the house, which I had initially rented out to somebody who wasn't paying. So trying to make everything work and just getting deeper and deeper in the hole. So I'm sitting there on the phone with the guy and I just start bawling. I am crying. I'm like, I am split in half. I'm in school full time. I'm working full time. I'm a single mom to this beautiful 3-year-old, and we're sitting in Chick-fil-A and I'm crying, smelling garbage and, beautiful sunny weather. And so he's stroking my hair and he goes, "It's okay, mommy, don't cry." And I was like, why is my 3-year-old comforting me? Why? And so that was it. I just decided at that point, this was not going to continue and I was going to figure it out, whatever it took. And that was the initial road. And it wasn't perfect. It was a journey for sure. Lots of hills, lots of valleys, lots of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You just think you've gotten ahead and you get a little bit of a hit, a financial hit or what have you. But it really solidified my desire to never be in that position again and to never have to have my child comfort me over finances.
But, I have to say, what a beautiful moment that your son, to me, it's just a testament of the kind of mother you are, that your son was able to be so compassionate and to reach out to you. I mean, it's making me get choked up. I can picture this moment and I just think what a beautiful son that you have, that he was able to see mommy's need for comfort and he was able to do that. And I think, again, that comes back to the type of mother that you are, the way you've raised him to be this, at the time he was only 3, but he still understood enough that this is what mommy needs. This is what I can do. And I love that. So I just wanted to point that out. Yeah, because I just think that is so beautiful. Even though it was in that challenging time, I think such a beautiful moment was shared between the two of you, getting that comfort. And then, getting that fuel to say, never again, I'm not going to be in this position ever again. And I want to be able to set my son up not to be in this position either. So that takes me to my next question. In your work, you emphasize the importance of financial education for women and teens. So can you share some common financial mistakes you see and how education can help prevent them?
So I think this is really multifaceted. I think there's a mindset piece that we definitely do not do enough education around. So we have generational mindsets about money and, where we should put it, what we should do with it. I know, like for my family, my mom was a spender. Like I said, my dad was very much into the CPA and the, estate planning and whatnot. And so it was a very different being different raised by that. My mom bought things. It made her feel good and made her feel fulfilled. And it was always keeping up with the Joneses next door. Whereas my dad was like, we're going to retire early and we're going to put money away. And it was like a battle back and forth with them. So I think communication around money and really money mindset is the staple to financial literacy, financial foundations. Because if you don't have that same mindset as your partner or same goals as your partner, then that's where you're going to find a lot of that fighting comes from and whatnot. So I would say that's definitely one of the key pieces is the communication and the goals that you have moving forward. And then, a common pitfall is, again, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to look like you have money rather than saving money and putting it away and living within your means so that you can have a retirement, maybe even early retirement, so that you can live and travel or whatever is important to you. And I don't think that we talk about that enough. I think money is so taboo. It's such a taboo topic that, people aren't sitting down at the table and saying like, oh, this is our goal. So we're saving for this. And for example, I have my son in private school right now. That's very important for me to have him there. And so one of the things that we have given up in terms of, we used to do 4 vacations a year, and they're not fancy or crazy, but there's something we chose to kind of put on hold for a little bit so that he could have a private school education. And a lot of our friends are like, oh, we didn't see you guys going on vacation this year, or like your usual blah, blah, blah. And, that's okay. We chose not to do that so that he could go to private school. That was our sacrifice for him to have that opportunity and to have those doors opened for him. And I think people are afraid to say that. Afraid to say like we chose one over the other. We decided not to do both. You know what I mean? Because it looks like, oh, well, are you having financial struggles? We're not. We're not financially struggling at all. It's a choice that we made. And I think that's really important. What is important to you? And then giving things up that maybe are less important or less return on investment, I guess is the right word to say,
I love what you said, and you just described me to a T. Growing up, soon as I was out in the workforce making my own money, I had no plan for it other than what can I buy with it? Like, how can I buy the beautiful clothes and the shoes? I was all about material things, and I didn't have that financial education about saving. I saw some of my friends who were doing that. They were investing their money. They were saving. Very smart. But I never was taught that. I was really, one of the things I learned from my grandfather, my mom's dad, was that, spend your money, you can't take it with you. And so I never had anything other than that as my motto, like, oh, I can't take it with me, so I have to spend it. I love that you said that. And also, it's the whole thing about trying to keep up with the Joneses. In this world we live in, social media, everyone's online looking at what everyone else is doing and at what everyone else has. And people are also, they are also marketing, like you can have like this fancy car, these amazing vacations, this big home, all of this if you do X, Y, Z. And so people are getting drawn into that and trying to keep up with all of that instead of just saying, you know what? I just want to live my life the way I did. Just like you said, we wanted to make the sacrifice of the vacations now because I wanted my son to have an education that I thought was more valuable to him in the long run. Those vacations, they're going to come later, and that's okay because education is so important. So I truly believe like you made a decision. Of course, people are not always going to agree with, but I love the fact that you were saying, you know what? This is what I've decided to do. And I don't need to explain this to anybody. The only one that matters to me is that my son grows up knowing that I was making decisions based on his future and his well-being. So I love that. Thank you so much for like sharing
Yeah.
that, because it really like spoke to me. I was like, oh, she's describing me to a T.
So
You
there's two
know?
things that, that kind of come to mind when we talk about that. And that is you want to plan for tomorrow, but also like there is no tomorrow. And that's why I love, like when I work with my clients one-on-one, I will say to them, what are your non-negotiables? Because those are important. Like I want my people, I want my clients to have the things that absolutely make or break their everyday life. So if it's the $100 gym membership, because when you go there every morning, you feel uplifted and motivated and it makes your day, let's figure out how to make that happen for you, right? I want you to have the non-negotiable. But then also, like, what are the things that maybe you do that you're like, yeah, I could live without that. So planning for tomorrow, but also like there is no tomorrow, allows you to have some of those non-negotiable things so that you do feel like you're still taking care of yourself or making yourself happy with whatever that is. So yeah, I really try to instill that in my clients.
I love that. Well, that actually helps lead me into the next question, because again, you're working with two different age categories, right? And you're also working, so, and when you say teens, you're not saying like just girls, you're
Yeah.
saying teens. So in general, so I guess my question is, how do you tailor your approach when you're teaching these financial concepts to the different age groups and to different demographics?
Yeah, so it is a little bit of a challenge. I do feel sort of lucky and blessed because my son is 14 right now. So I, have these conversations with him and then I can utilize what he understands or what his feedback is to help me to tailor it a little bit more. We've been talking with him about money since he was about 10 years old. So he is really understanding a lot of the concepts now and whatnot. So there is definitely a difference. I will also say, as a nation in the US, we're not as financially literate as we could be. And so I have a lot of clients who don't even know the foundations or the basics of money management and of debt management and things like that. So sometimes I am honestly going back to square one, just like I would with a teenager who doesn't have that information. And so it's not necessarily all as different as you would think. I think that the biggest change or the biggest difference is the attention span. So you have to break it down in smaller chunks over 10 or 15 minutes for teenagers, and then give them time to ruminate on it, give them like a little thing to practice, like practice going to the grocery store and adding up what one meal would cost to make, kind of a thing. Whereas like an adult would kind of already understand that, you know what I mean? And they could take in more information at one given time.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, you actually talked about debt repayment. So I want to really get there, because
Yeah.
I know that because of the whole thing of keeping up with the Joneses, that debt can become a really big part of someone's life. And it can creep up without you even recognizing it or realizing it, or you're just ignoring like, oh, I want to go out and buy more and more and more, and not realizing that they're racking up that credit card, and that credit cards are not free money. And I think that was what I was looking at, is like credit cards, well, this is free money, but not realizing with that comes an actual cost, because I'm not just paying back what I spent, I'm paying back interest. So can you walk us through your approach to helping someone develop a debt repayment plan and stay motivated throughout the process?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to repay debt, and we could get into all of them. You can do higher interest rates first so that you're decreasing your total amount repaid. But if you're somebody who maybe needs a quick win, you want to maybe pay off a lower amount first, just so you get that, yeehaw, and feel like you can kind of keep moving forward. But really, the primary thing is, well, there's two really. So you're A, paying the debt off, and B, you need to have emergency money, because what is the cycle of debt? The cycle of debt, generally speaking, is I'm paying all of this money towards my credit cards to pay them off. And then I blow 3 tires and I have all-wheel drive. So I have to replace all 4 at one time, right? And now all of a sudden you have a $1,200 tire bill that you weren't expecting. So where does the money for that come from? Nowhere. It goes on the credit card. And so now you've just spent all of this money paying back 29% interest rates on credit cards, which only maybe, $100 of that $400 payment went to the actual principal because everything else is going to the interest. And now you just added $1,200 to that principal. So how do we stop that cycle of debt? First of all, we start building an emergency fund, meaning we pay the minimum payments on everything that we can until we have, and unfortunately in this day and age, $1,500 to $2,000 is really the minimum in the US for an emergency fund, just to kind of get you by until you've paid off your debt. So, whatever that takes. And I tell people, get crazy about building it, sell things, do, under the table yard work for somebody, errands for somebody, whatever you have to do to get that $1,500 to $2,000 and put it in a high yield savings account, let it start building interest for you, and then start getting crazy about paying off your debt, right? So minimum payments till you have the emergency fund, and then you just start banging out the payments on the credit card debt. That's the first kind of step. The second step is to call your creditors and start negotiating. Everything in life is negotiable. I don't care what they say. When they say no the first time, it just means next opportunity. So you go to the next manager or you hang up and you call back and you get somebody different. You negotiate your interest rate. That is probably one of the best ways to do it, because if you're at 29% and you can get it down to 10%, more of your money is going to go to the principal of your debt every single month versus if you keep that higher interest rate. A lot of people can negotiate down what they owe. So they can call the credit card company. Maybe they owe $12,000. You could negotiate that down to say $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 and negotiate a repayment plan with them. Now, a lot of times they'll close your account and it's a little bit of a hit to your credit. But if you're already behind, you're already late, and your credit's already getting hit every month with late payments, it's kind of 6 one, half dozen of the other. What's worse? Get out of the debt. That's the most important part. So however you're doing it, just get it done. Worry about the credit ratings a little bit later. They're important and I'm not negating them. I want to be very clear about that. But if you're already behind and you're already struggling, let's just find the best way out so that you can start building emergency money.
Yeah. Oh, I really love your approach to that. That is very cool. I've never heard anyone say that. I've always heard people say, well, with your credit card, that just pay more on the lowest one to get them paid off. But I never heard anyone say, but make sure you are building that emergency fund so that you don't have to go back to credit in case something happens. I've never heard anyone say that before. You're the first person. And I think that is really a great and valuable lesson. Building that emergency so that you have the money available, that you're not paying interest back to somebody. That's all yours. And if you need it, it's there to be used. And it gives you that safety net. That's what we're trying to build, is that safety and security, that stability. And we can't do that through credit, because especially if you're, like you were saying, your credit gets hit. And then if you do manage to get more credit, they're not giving you the lower interest rate cards. They're giving you the higher interest rate cards. So you end up digging a bigger hole. So I really love that. So thank you for pointing that out, because like I said, no one I've ever heard say that. I think that's really important. So I want to move to wealth building, right? Because I know that's an essential part of financial stability. I know you talked about having this emergency fund, but what strategies? Because I know that, as I said, you've talked about where you found yourself. Your son was 3. You were in a drive-through. You're trying to figure out how to get yourself out of this situation you found yourself in. You're being comforted by your son, and you're saying, "No more. I need to figure these things out." So I know that this is something that you've done for yourself. So what strategies would you recommend, or do you recommend, for women looking to build wealth, especially for those who might be starting later in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to be very transparent, I am not a financial advisor. So these are my personal opinions and not financial advice, but I always start with the emergency fund. So we just talked about the 1,500 to 2,000 while you're paying debt off. But the next step, once your debt is paid off, is to build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And you want to keep that money what we call liquid. So 3 to 6 months emergency money looks like whatever you pay in bills every month, you just multiply that by 3 to 6 months. If you're single, you have no debt, no children, nobody who relies on you, 3 months may be enough for you. If you're a family man or family woman, if you have kids, if you have any type of payment, mortgage, etc., a 6 month or even a 1 year emergency fund is probably more what your needs would be. So we always start there. We keep that money liquid. And in terms of liquid, I don't want to see it in your savings or your checking account because you're earning, if you're lucky, 0.25% of interest. I want to see it in a high yield savings account where you're earning maybe 5% or potentially even a CD, depending on how liquid that CD is. Maybe half and half. Maybe you keep 3 months in the high yield savings and you keep 3 months worth in a CD. Whatever the case, you can talk to your financial advisor about it, but you want that money to be readily available should there be a layoff, an emergency, a medical problem that you need that money to be available. So anything that you need within a year needs to be liquid. Same thing if you're saving for a wedding or something like that. If your wedding is in less than a year, that money goes into something that's liquid that you can pull it if you need it within 24 hours. So that would be my first step. My second step would be to max out any of your tax advantage accounts. So if you have an employer sponsored 401k or 403b or SEP or whatever it is, you want to look at your either IRA traditional or Roth IRA, depending on what you qualify for with how much money you make. Again, a financial advisor can go more in depth with that. But any of those tax advantage accounts, health savings accounts are great to put money into. You can actually invest inside the account, not just let the money sit there for medical emergencies, but you can invest inside the account. And then later in life, whatever you haven't used, you can potentially roll over. I believe it's after 65, but again, talk to a financial advisor and it becomes, liquid money that you can use for retirement. All of those things are really important to get into. I think once you have those all kind of set up, then you start looking at other ways to diversify your portfolio. Now, whether that be a brokerage account in the stock market, whether you want to invest in buying houses and flipping them, or buying real estate and doing Airbnbs or renting them out for long-term rentals, whatever that looks like, there's a lot of options. And I actually have a second class that I'm building and working with a few women who do diversified types of investing that are going to jump in and start helping teach this stuff. But there's a lot of opportunity to invest. I think the most important thing that you need to think about when you're investing is what's your risk tolerance, right? What are you willing to put out? And if everything goes to shit, pardon my French, and you lose the money, are you going to be okay? And are you going to be okay with that rebuilding it? That's the first thing. And then the second thing really is understanding what you're putting your money into. I've seen too many women, men, everybody honestly go, well, I read such and such on this, website. And so I just put my money into crypto. But I don't understand what crypto is, where it came from, how it started, what's happening with it. You don't have to be an investment advisor, knowledge depth, but you have to understand what it's doing and where it's going and what your potential is for growth and for losing money, essentially.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, even though you're not, as you said, a financial advisor, I feel like what you've just laid out is based on your own experiences. For me, is like someone who is now who might be thinking about it as, one of our listeners might be thinking about, okay, this is what I've been wanting to do. I've been wanting to think about like, how do I build wealth? And I haven't the faintest idea where to start. And so they're listening to the episode and they click on the links in the episode to reach out to you to figure out, I still feel like you're qualified to help someone, because everything that you've said so far just makes sense to me. Again, paying attention, it's self-awareness. It's not just saying, oh, well, I'm going to go invest in crypto because someone said to do it. Or Bitcoin, like the Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, yeah.
There's so many different there's so many different variations of things out there. And you might hit the wrong one. You might hit the right one at the right time, but then something might happen. There's just so many things to know. And are you willing to invest the time? Because that right there to learn, because if you're not going to invest the time to learn, then what you're doing is you're setting yourself up to lose. That's what my personal opinion. And I think that's why it's so important. Yeah. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that because I wanted to know a little bit more. Question though, just a follow up. When you were talking about the high yield savings, is that different or is it similar to like a tax-free savings account? Like, are they different?
They're very different. So you will get taxed on the interest that you earn in a high yield savings account. Depending on how much money you have in that high yield savings account, depends on how much tax you're going to pay. For the average person who maybe has $10,000 or $20,000 in there, at 5%, you're not going to get a whole lot of tax on that every year. And it's worth paying the tax on it for the amount of money that you're getting back and keeping that money liquid. A lot of times if you're invested in the market, depending again, where your money is and whatnot, unless you're pulling the money out or you're getting dividends from it, a lot of times you're not getting taxed because it's just an quote unrealized gain, meaning, that money is just still sitting in there growing and growing and growing, and it's not realized until you pull it out. And here's actually an interesting thought or topic, but if you're listening to the news, you're hearing that certain parties are saying, oh, we're talking about taxing unrealized gain. How do you tax unrealized gain when that changes from day to day? When the market goes up, your unrealized gain goes up. When the market goes down, your unrealized gain generally goes down because you're losing gains. And so that's something to think about as you're thinking about the election and whatnot. What are they saying about realized and unrealized gains, and how do you tax that type of a thing? And I don't have an answer for that. That's above my pay grade, but it is something just to kind of keep in mind and think about. You're not actually making any money until you've pulled that money out.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for explaining this. I just wanted to, in case anyone was wondering, like, what's the difference between the two? I just want them to be really educated as best as possible. So during the holiday season, this is one of the things, here we are, December, we're at the beginning of the month, people are now, buying. They just came off of Black Friday. They've been out there shopping, buying the gifts, the latest toys, the latest gadgets for Christmas presents. And I know with that comes stress, like that financial stress really increases. So what practical advice, or just how would you like help someone if they're in this state, learn to manage their finances, reduce their stress, and avoid that buyer's remorse due to the pressures of this time of year?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I love it. I think there's a couple of ways that you can prevent this, and then there's a couple of ways that you can deal with it. One of the ways to prevent it is by planning ahead. So if you spend $200 for a birthday and you spend around $500 for Christmas every year, then, or whatever holiday every year, then you put that money, you divide that amount by 12 months and you start putting that amount of money in your sinking fund, which is just a little separate account that you can move money over to. And I love doing this also for like quarterly, semi-annual, and annual bills, because it helps to have that money sort of set aside ahead of time. So it's not such a big bang on the door when that bill comes through. So if you plan in advance, you can go ahead and start putting some of that money aside. So when that holiday comes, it's not such a hit to your bank account. So that's one great way to preventatively do this. Another way to look at it is start buying gifts throughout the year. Start in January or February and buy one or two things, set it aside. Another way that I love to offset some of these holiday expenses is, and this depends on how old your kids are, but make the holiday a vacation. Find out where your kids really want to go. If they want to go to Disney and that's within your holiday budget, or maybe that's your holiday and birthday budget. We've done this with James. We say to him, you can take a friend and we're all going to go. And we've gone to the Bahamas and we've done swimming with the dolphins and we've gone to the beaches and played with the pigs. And that's his big gift, but that's his birthday gift, his Christmas gift. And it's an experience. It's educational, learning about culture and different foods and things like that. And I love the way that his friends have talked about, A friend of his went to Italy recently on a family vacation, and he texted me and said, I was sitting on the plane and it made me think of when we went to the Bahamas and did all of this stuff. And I'm just so appreciative. These are 14-year-old boys. Like they don't do things like that, right? But like he was just so in love with the fact that he got to go and do these things. So those memories are really, really just really amazing. So that's another way to avoid having a pile of gifts that they play with for a day or two and then, kind of don't touch again, that end up in the donation bin, 3 months later. So those are a couple of quick ways. Also setting an expectation, not everybody gets the same thing. Sometimes kids go to school and they start talking, I got the PS5 and I got this and I got that. And, your kid comes home and they're like, I got clothes for school and a teddy bear or whatever. I think if they're old enough to set the expectation and explain to them, some people get different things. And that's hard when you're still in that age where you're believing in, Saint Nick or whoever you believe in. But there's ways to have those conversations without giving away the joy of Saint Nick or whoever it is that you're going to. So yeah, those are some easy, quick ways to do that. I definitely think pre-planning is the way to go. In terms of buyer's remorse, that's hard. I think you make a decision in the moment and you come back to it and you think, why did I do that? And I think the biggest thing that you can do is learn from it. There's no way to fix it in that moment, but if you learn from it and you say, I'm not going to do that again next year, I'm going to pre-plan, I'm going to take control. That's the biggest gift you can give yourself, is to say, okay, I messed up and I'm going to move on and I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to do something differently now.
Yeah. Oh, I loved everything about that. I do, because you talked about that sinking fund, when people hear that word sinking, but it actually it's like that planning period, planning for it. I love the idea. If you have a specific budget around different holidays, birthdays, whatever they are, even vacations, you could have that fund where the money goes, okay, this is what we're going to be doing this year. This is the big trip that we're going to take because it's going to be combined for your birthday and for Christmas, and we're going to bring a friend, and this is what we're going to do. So you start budgeting for it and you start planning for it, putting the money aside into that fund. That's really helpful. And then you don't have to be like scrambling last minute. So I really, really love that. I'm all about collecting experiences anyways. For me, my husband and I have been moving around a lot. We're currently in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And
Ooh,
yeah, we've been here now. Yeah, thanks. We've been here since July. And we are loving it. We decided just to come for a few months. We're not sure if we're going to extend the time. But what I really love is that collecting of experiences means that, we've learned to live tiny, meaning stuff is not as important as the experiences that we collect, meeting new people. The food here is incredible. The culture, I love the people here, meeting new people, doing different things. There's a calming effect for me that I cannot explain, but it's something that I just learned over the last, we've been married almost 29 years. And over that time, we have moved several different places all over the US and Canada, and we spent a couple winters in another place here in Mexico called Puerto Morelos. And so we've been like doing this, having this lifestyle and just collecting those experiences along the way. And every time we've had an accumulation of stuff, it becomes less important of like, oh, we got to keep all of this, and more about, okay, what is really necessary and what can we give away and or sell? And that's what we did. We've been doing for, like I said, over, we've been married, as I said, it'll be 29 years in February. So that's what we do. So
love that.
Yeah. And so I love the idea of like the experience and having that 14-year-old boy text you saying, I remember when we were going to the Bahamas and all that we did. And it's like, what a great memory for him. And that it landed so well with him that this is a teaching moment, which I believe is teaching our young people to value the experience of life rather than value the next latest gadget or phone or toy or stuff that is like, 10 years from now, unless it's something that you really truly value behind, you're not even going to remember what you received 10 years ago for Christmas, unless you still own it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really love that.
I will say one thing we do with our son that really helps him value what it is that he wants. When he wanted a PlayStation 5 and we had gotten him a regular PlayStation a few years before, we had him earn the money to buy half of it. We said, listen, we'll pay for half, you pay for half. And so he had to wait. He had to work and save and work and save and work and save. And in the end, we ended up just taking his money and investing it for him, and we bought it for him. But it gave him that delayed gratification, which is one thing that I think we don't do enough in the US is a delayed gratification. We just want it now and we see it, so we get it. And it showed him the amount of time that he had to spend working for just half of the cost of that PlayStation 5. And it gave more of a value to him than if we just got it for him and said, yeah, here you go, bud,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's teaching him the value of time and money together,
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. Marla, it has been amazing. Thank you very much for coming and spending time with me today, sharing your story. I really love that you are so dedicated to educating women and teens about personal finances and how you share and you support it through, your truly lived experience. And that is, to me, extremely inspiring. It shows that there's hope for teens to actually, our younger generation who's going to go out into the world and make decisions that, might affect me in my years now. It might affect you or any of our generation that are the older generation. Our young people, if they're educated financially, if they're educated around just life in general and not just about the me culture and like, I want stuff, I'm entitled to it, rather just saying, you know what, this is what life is about. It's experiencing life, but it's also having awareness around finances so that I set myself up to live a truly thriving lifestyle and not struggling because I'm making bad choices. So I really love that. I'll make sure that your contact information is in the show notes. So like anyone who's listening right now is saying, I want to talk to Marla about this. This is so interesting to me. I've been wanting to teach my kids or I want to learn for myself so that I can have a better life for me and my children or for just myself in general. I'll make sure that your show notes have your links so that anyone can get a hold of you. Again, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And to our listeners, I hope you're walking away with some newfound knowledge and feel more empowered to tackle your money goals, as well as have a healthier mindset around finances. Remember, what you learn here on this podcast can really serve as that beacon guiding you toward a more fulfilled and purposeful life. Harness the lessons you're learning, reflect on them, and consider how they might illuminate your own path. Again, if you're inspired by Marla's journey and you want to explore her offerings, how they can aid you in your own financial growth, check the show notes for all the ways that you can reach out to her. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Dreaming of the perfect event or longing for a clutter-free space? I'm Stephanie with I'm with Steph, where your vision becomes a reality. From magical weddings to transformative home organizing, we bring you expertise and passion to every project. Whether you're planning a grand celebration or seeking peace through organization, we tailor our services to meet your unique needs. I'm with Steph. To explore our services and connect with me directly, visit imwithsteph.com. Mention ElectraCast for a 20% discount.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electricast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music. Electricast.
Electricast.